Hi everyone, I'm Katie Karlovitz, here to talk about how to speak gun truth to power. The Chinese have a curse, which is, may you live in interesting times. We are in the thick of interesting times in America. Just a few months into the Me Too movement, which have been dizzying enough, we find out also that the Russians did in fact hack our presidential election. The president, it turns out, has been romping with Playboy bunnies. All sorts of, unsavory things are coming out. So I want to frame this up, this tutorial on how to speak gun truth to power, by reminding you of one thing. This is an election year, 2018. And the only way that we as citizens, non-combatant citizens, have to fight this scourge right now is to vote people who would accept money from the NRA or give money to the NRA or are unwilling or inflexible around gun controls, vote them out of office. That's straightforward. The next thing, if you are not registered to vote, you need to, because every state in this country, except North Dakota, requires you to register to vote. You can do that at a state or local election office. You could do it at the Department of Motor Vehicles, Armed Services Recruitment Centers, even SNAP, food stamps, the state and county public assistance centers. You have to register to vote. Every state has absentee voting. 37 states let you register online. So first order of business, if you have not already, register to vote. I have to tell you, I'm coming to you as a long-time fan of the freedom of speech, a loyal American, patriotic American, and I've read a lot of colonial history about the incredible story of how this country was born, the people who were involved in the fervent and indefatigable fight to declare ourselves as United States independent of Britain or any other country. I'm so patriotic that I wrote a book about public speaking, but designed it with a red, white, and blue cover because I am a huge fan of this country and what it stands for. What it stands for in the First Amendment is freedom of speech. That becomes, before freedom to bear arms, is the freedom of speech. And I want to know what we can do to use our freedom of speech to get some sort of justice for innocent Americans whose lives are being lost, their families' lives are being ruined forever. I believe that we have to fight fire with fire, and this is definitely a war that we're involved in right now. So how do we get good people to start speaking up in public? Who are you? Where are you? Let me remind you of this. Benjamin Franklin said, "Hide not your gifts, they for use were made. What's a sundial in the shade?" So what are your gifts? How are you able to put together a message that will impact other people because of the way you have been impacted by gun violence in this country? All right. I do believe that when we are armed with words and images and stories that will speak the truth, then we'll have integrity and honor and the truth on our side. I look at my news sources carefully. Right now, mine are the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian, NPR, places that clearly are not skewing nonsense and malarkey as other sources of news are. I've worked in New York City for 25 years as a public speaking consultant, and that is the International Rescue Committee. And the woman on the right is Queen Rania of Jordan. The man on the left is David Miliband. He's the head of the IRC. He used to be an MP in Parliament in London, and she is married to King Abdullah of Jordan. She was the spokesperson last year for the IRC dinner. They have an annual event in New York City, 800 people at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. And my job was to coach 3 teenagers who were, in fact, refugees from wars themselves. That's why the stories are always so horrifying. The young lady on the left was born in a refugee camp in eastern Nepal. The man in the middle left his country, fled the fighting in Cote d'Ivoire. The woman on the right was the same story, fighting in Burkina Faso, her country. So Last year, I worked with these three. We each gave them 3 minutes or so to tell their stories. We had to keep them very simple, obviously, because English is not their first language at all. Their schooling had been disrupted, so they had no advantage to be an effective speaker. However, what we did was we let the stories speak for themselves. We didn't try to embellish them or because they're awful enough. And that's the case of the gun control as well. Don't clobber them over the head with numbers or images. They speak for themselves. Last year, 96% of the audience rated this segment of my three speakers as either excellent or very good. And that night we raised $10 million for the IRC. This year, here I coached the two speakers on either side of the luminous and lovely Liv Ullmann, who's been just wonderful spokesperson. The young lady on the left was persecuted for being Baha'i in her home country of Syria. The young man on the right was born in Congo at the age of 4. He was tortured by soldiers while his mother was made to watch. Normally in the past, I would not have included a detail like that. However, because of the problems that we've had getting refugees resettled safely into the country, I was told by David Miliband to take, the gloves are off. This year we have to let them know more directly why we need their support. So the gloves are off for me and now in terms of the support that we need for gun controls. How do we go about becoming an advocate or voice for people? I'm going to do what Lincoln said. I do the very best I know how, the very best I can, and I mean to keep doing so until the end. All right. So the way to get yourself oriented and prepared is to understand that this is a very emotionally charged discussion. And as such, you want to try to manage the emotions in a way that is going to serve your message, not distract from it. The emotional component for me, in this case, is a visual. This very heartbreaking cartoon of Coach Weiss, who was killed last week in Parkland, defending his students. And this is him being welcomed clearly into heaven, where all the other innocent children and teachers and people are, who have been gunned down with automatic rifles. So this, to me, also this image of little children visiting the multiple crosses, it's unacceptable. It stops now. So select either stories or images or sounds, anything that gets you where you live. Okay, this is one thing to bear in mind. We cannot fight ignorance with ignorance. We have to fight it with intelligence. And that means beginning with a really strong message. And how do you write? You write for the spoken word, not for the written word. There's a big difference in the way the two types of language, at least in English, align but are very different. So when you're writing for the spoken word, your sentence structure is going to be different. It's going to be shorter. It's going to be punchier. You want to write using muscular words and avoiding cliches, both verbal cliches as well as visual cliches. You want to give perhaps 2 or 3 main points to your message, because you can't tell them everything that you know about the subject or feel. You're going to have to make some choices. And for making those choices, again, you can't say everything. I recommend first getting into a very beautiful, calm, natural, if possible, inspiring place that lets you forget everything else. Don't sit down in front of your computer to write this. Get out into some place that supports tuning into who you are. Place of calm, of inspiration, of beauty. Once you're there, you'll be able to tune in to, again, 2 or 3 things. We're going to keep it simple. Once you've got them, go home, put them on paper, give them an order, a beginning, a middle, and an ending. And your beginning is the most important part of it, because if you don't get their attention there, they will not tune in later to see if you've become interesting. All right, beginning, middle, and an ending. The ending should conclude. It should not just stop. then you're going to want to rehearse professionally. With our iPhones these days, smartphones, you've got your timer, which you want to begin to tune into how much does 3 minutes feel like when you're talking. New speakers are not going to necessarily have a developed inner clock. You want to record yourself so you hear how you sound. How is your pacing? Are you racing? Often newer speakers will tend to race. Is your pitch where you want it to be? The pitch is how high or low your voice is. Often when we're tense, the pitch of the voice can go up. You want to listen for that. Also, then you can record on video to see not just how you sound, but how you look and sound. And then ultimately I would rehearse in front of a trusted person or two. That's the best kind of rehearsal for then doing it live. The other thing to be mindful of when you're getting ready is what you wear. I recommend power colors, reds, oranges, ruby, garnet, purple, anything in that palette are considered power colors. I'm not saying head to toe cherry red, but I'm saying pick places and colors that make you feel empowered. The same goes for your shoes. I want you to wear shoes, because that's where you're connected to the earth, that make you feel empowered. So no comfy shoes, something that is comfortable but supportive and makes you feel like you could go in there and kick some butt. My tip for managing stage fright, which I get, Bach Rescue Remedy is excellent. I use their products to manage my own stage fright when I get it, which isn't always, but when I do, I like to have these. The other thing that you're going to do to manage your nerves is limit your caffeine. I would switch to herbal tea. You don't need caffeine as well as adrenaline in your nervous system. Drink plenty of water, but not carbonated. And limit dairy, which creates phlegm, and watch what you eat when you're presenting. You should not ever present on an empty stomach, because you need fuel to do this. This is a performance-based skill, not just talking. So you need to make sure that you have proper nutrition and your body has healthy fuel in it. The final thing that you're going to want to do is give them a call to action. What would you like your audience to do as a result of listening to your message? Do you want them to give you their email address, their phone number, take your phone number? Do you want them to march with you, to give their own talk, to register to vote? Whatever it is, this is where you ask them. And you want to ask strong and end strong and relive the vital necessity of why you personally are there asking for their help. Because you know what? We need it. This country is in perilous shape if we don't, as good and honorable people, learn how to and then do stand up for the rights of people who can no longer speak for themselves. This is incredibly important. If you have any questions, you can always find me at Katie@unspeakingterms.com. I support you. I'm here for you. Now go forth and prosper.